Respected Dharma masters, respected practitioners, and guests. In the last talk on Liao Fan's 4 lessons, we learned of Mr. Liao Fan's sincerity in honoring his teacher and revering his teachings. He did not casually say that he would do something and then forget all about it in a short time. Instead, he had the rare ability to immediately understand and believe everything the Master told him. We see the depth of this understanding and belief as Mr. Liao Fan began to regret each and every one of his faults in front of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In essence, he asked them to be his witness. When we are truly intelligent and wise, we will let others know of our faults. Then, when we are corrected, our karmic obstacles will be reduced. The Master taught him to chant a mantra to help him to concentrate his mind, to eradicate his wandering thoughts, and to uncover his true mind. The goal to attain purity of mind remains the same whether we are reciting sutras, chanting mantras, or chanting a Buddha's name. What is important is that we choose the method that is right for us. If we cultivate sincerely and diligently, then we will be able to end our erroneous ways, practice kind deeds, and cultivate purity of mind. In due time, whatever we seek will be attained. In our seeking something from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or beings of heaven or earth, we need to do so without having any thoughts or considerations for our seeking to be truly effective. To achieve this, our mind needs to be truly pure, without any wandering thoughts. This is the mind of sincerity, purity, and respect. Only when we appeal to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas using our mind of utmost sincerity will we attain what we wish for. Unfortunately, most people wish for a happy and fulfilling life, not realizing that happiness and fulfilling life are not necessarily synonymous with fame, wealth, and prestige. Therefore, we need to understand that when we wish to create our destiny, we need to be able to accord with sentient beings and to be joyful over the meritorious deeds of others. Only in this way will our lives truly be happy and fulfilling. Regardless of favorable or unfavorable circumstances, we will be completely at ease. Everything will become clear and logical. We will have good fortune and attain ultimate liberation. This is true living. True happiness is not achievable without great knowledge and our actual efforts in our practice. Actual learning and practice are true knowledge. Reaching achievement is returning to our original state. It is to reveal our original self-nature, which is not the state of an ordinary being. This is true happiness. It is to be filled with the Dharma joy, to truly abandon suffering for happiness. It is what awakened people seek. Only when we become awakened will we be able to settle our minds. And only then will we be able to create our destiny. In the last talk on creating and changing destiny, I spoke of the precept against the consumption of intoxicants. There is also another precept against the consumption of the 5 pungent vegetables of onions, green onions, chives, garlic, and leeks. The Buddha prohibited the consumption of these 5 vegetables to discourage people from consuming them, and he especially prohibited the use of garlic. Why? The Surangama Sutra explains that purity of mind is of utmost importance in our cultivation. However, if we have not yet reached a certain level of achievement, our intake of both food and drink can adversely affect our purity of mind. Once we have achieved a certain level, we will be in control of our minds, able to control our environment. Then there will be no hindrances. But until then, our minds are still influenced by the environment. So if we can have these 5 pungent vegetables, we will no longer be in control of that environment. The Buddha told us that when we eat these 5 vegetables, it can increase our irritability when we consume them raw. To eat them cooked can increase our hormone production. So there are many reasons why the Buddha set up these precepts. In other words, whether we eat these raw or cooked, they are forbidden because they can adversely affect us, increasing our afflictions. Some lay people have said, if we cannot eat these vegetables, then we do not wish to become vegetarian. We need to understand the reasons behind this and all precepts. If these vegetables are used as seasonings, they will have no adverse effects. For example, if we stir fry 1 or 2 cloves of garlic into a dish, it will not cause any harm. Thus, when we understand the reasoning, we will see that Buddhism is very logical and very flexible. There are exceptions to strictly observing the precepts, even after receiving them, that enable us to introduce Buddhism to others. Therefore, at certain functions, we need to behave wisely, to adapt ourselves to the current circumstances, and to make use of the opportunity to introduce Buddhism to others. It is an unimaginably rare opportunity for them to hear of these teachings. During drinks and at mealtime, we can explain to them the great truths of Buddhism, to plant the good root. This is a rare educational opportunity not to be wasted. From the text. It took me more than 10 years to complete the 10,000 meritorious deeds I had vowed to do. I was unable to dedicate the merits from these good deeds at a temple until I returned to my hometown in the south a few years later. At that time, I had the opportunity to ask 2 monks to dedicate them for me. End quote. It took Mr. Liao Fan more than 10 years to fulfill his vow. Because he had a post with the army that required traveling, he did not have a chance to dedicate the merits. It was not until the year after he had fulfilled his vow to accomplish the good deeds that he had the opportunity, the chance to do so. He engaged the services of several monks at a temple to dedicate the merits on his behalf after having completely fulfilled his vow to accomplish the good deeds. Upon making his pledge, he had written to gods or to spirits to express his sincerity and earnestness in turning over a new leaf and in accumulating merits and virtues. Upon completion of his 3,000 meritorious deeds, he dedicated them to repay an obligation and for the fulfillment of his wish. From the text. Then I made my second wish, and that was for a son. I vowed to complete another 3,000 meritorious good deeds. A few years later, your mother gave birth to you and named you Tianqi. End quote. Mr. Liao Fan had not been destined to have a son, but having wished for one, found his wish was fulfilled. Proper seeking will enhance the gain. He attained his wish due to correct seeking and cultivation. Mr. Liao Fan had pledged to complete 3,000 more good deeds, but before he had completed them, his wife had given birth to their first son, Tianqi. From this, we can see that if we truly and sincerely wish for something, it will come true. Of course, although he had gained a son before completing his pledge of the 3,000 good deeds, he would honor it. It was the same as what had happened previously. He took the imperial examination, but before he could fulfill his pledge, he came in first when he had been destined to come in third. This is to be in correspondence, and this is truly inconceivable. from the text. Every time I performed a good deed, I would record it in a book. Your mother, who could not read or write, would use a goose feather dipped in ink and make a red circle on the calendar for every good deed that she did. Sometimes she gave food to the poor, or bought living creatures from the marketplace and freed them in the wild. She recorded all of these with her red circles on the calendar. At times, she could accumulate more than 10 red circles in one day. End quote. Mr. Liao Fan's wife would buy animals in the marketplace and then set them free. When we have the heart to free captured creatures, we need to be careful not to be deceived. Many people who wanted to free animals would go to the market and buy them there. But they often captured the animals or the birds for us to buy to set free. If we did not buy the animals, they would not capture them. The more we try to free, the more they will try to capture. This will not help them, but will in fact put more of them at risk, causing more harm than good. In so doing, we do not only accumulate merits, but we accumulate offenses instead. Therefore, when we want to free living creatures, we need to do so only with those we inadvertently come upon in the marketplace when we do our grocery shopping. Do not buy them or seek them purposely, for to do so is to seek an affinity. By happening to come upon them, we can determine if they are able to survive in the wild. If they are, then we can buy them and set them free. If we do not think they are able to survive, then it would be better to use our money for some other purpose to cultivate and accumulate merits. Therefore, we need to be wise in our actions and not act impulsively. The meaning of freeing animals does not mean simply freeing them in the wild. It also includes becoming a vegetarian and encouraging others not to kill living beings, but to care for them. For example, we can print and freely distribute copies of the book, The Love of Life, with its beautiful illustrations by Mr. Zi Kai-feng, a famous Chinese illustrator. However, parts of this book are in classical Chinese. So perhaps someone could update the classical Chinese with phonetic pronunciations to update the book, as well as putting the illustrations into color. To do so would help today's children nurture the desire to help and care for all living beings. By doing so, we will truly achieve the essence of freeing living creatures. We need to understand the spirit, the profound meaning behind what we are taught, and not just follow something to the letter of what is said. As for the practice of giving, there are many kinds, including that of wealth, teaching, and fearlessness, each with their own inconceivably vast and profound meanings. Both Mr. Liao and his wife had refrained from wrongdoing and practiced good deeds. They were accomplishing their goal much faster than they had accomplished previously. In the past, they were sometimes unable to accomplish one good deed in one day, but took several days to do so. Thus, it took 10 years to complete 10,000 meritorious deeds. With 3,650 days in 10 years, accomplishing one good deed a day means there were over 600 days when they were unable to accomplish one single good deed. But now they were able to accomplish 10 good deeds in one day. A vast improvement over before. It is very difficult to turn over a new leaf, but they had the perseverance and the patience to do so. Without the willpower, the determination, it is not easy to eradicate our bad habits and faults. And this is the reason why many of us regress more than we progress on the path to enlightenment. From the book. Every day we practiced like this, and in 4 years, the 3,000 meritorious deeds were completed. Again, I made the dedications, this time in our home. On September 13th of that same year, I made my third wish, and that was to pass the highest level of the imperial examination. I also vowed to complete 10,000 meritorious deeds. After 3 years, I attained my wish and passed the examination. I was also made mayor of Baodi County. End quote. From 1580 to 1583, it only took Mr. Liao 4 years to complete the second pledge of 3,000 good deeds, whereas it had taken 10 years to complete the previous good deeds. This time, he again engaged the services of a monk to make the dedication at his home. On September 13th, he made the wish to pass the highest level of the imperial examination. He had not been destined to pass this particular examination at all. However, his destiny had also not included having a son, but he had attained one through his seeking and practice. It would also be a variable. If his wish to pass the examination were to come true, although he had not been destined to pass it. Everything that Master Yuangu had taught him had been proven true. Now he pledged to complete 10,000 good deeds. In 1586, only 3 years after his pledge, as expected, he attained his wish and passed the imperial examination. After this, he was assigned by the imperial government to be mayor of Baodi County, a position that had not been in his original destiny. Previously, he had been destined to be a mayor in Sichuan province, in southwest China, far from Beijing. But now, he was assigned to Baodi County, very close to Beijing, the capital. Baodi is southwest of Beijing and currently in Hebei province. From the book. When I served as the county mayor, I prepared a small book to record my merits and faults, and called it the Book of Cultivating the Mind. From then on, every morning when I started to work in my office, my servant would bring the book and have the guard place it on my desk. I would record my every deed, good or bad, no matter how small. At night, I set an altar in the courtyard and put on my official uniform to emulate the way of Mr. Zhao, an officer in the Song dynasty. I burned incense and reported all my deeds to the heavens. End quote. This helps us to understand how he felt about managing public affairs after he came in to office, of his wish to create good fortune for all those whom he was responsible for. At this time, city or county mayors were chosen by the imperial government. They were not elected. Mr. Liao was a very good county mayor. He refrained from any wrongdoing, cultivated good deeds, and accumulated merits and virtues. At the beginning of his term of office, he prepared a blank notebook and named it the Book of Cultivating the Mind. He used it every day to record his deeds, good or bad, so that he could be watchful over them and thus learn how to discipline his mind. Every day, Mr. Liao handled public affairs and served as an interrogator in the judicial system. This is unlike today, where the judicial and legislative departments are separated. In ancient China, the mayor managed both judicial and legislative cases. He carried the notebook with him wherever he went. When on duty, it would be placed on his office desk. Whatever good or bad things he did, big or small, He faithfully recorded them to see when he would be able to fulfill his pledge of 10,000 meritorious deeds. At night, he would go out into the garden and set up an incense altar. In the manner of Mr. Zhao, he then reported to gods and spirits everything he had done throughout the entire day, not hiding anything. Many ancient people followed this practice. They would openly and honestly admit to everything they had done, to be pure in both body and mind. Buddhists call this confessing and apologizing to the public. From the book. Once, your mother was concerned when she saw that I had not accumulated much merit. In the past, she was able to help me in our accumulation of good deeds, and we were able to accumulate 3,000 meritorious deeds. Now, I had made a pledge to complete 10,000 good deeds, and there were fewer opportunities to practice them at the government residence. She worried about how long it would take before my vow could be fulfilled. End quote. Before he became a government official, Mr. Liao Fan was not as busy with work. Thus, it was easy for his wife to assist him in doing good deeds. As a government official, they now lived in the government residence. In the past, there was little contact between those in the official government and the public, especially so for their family members. Therefore, she was no longer able to help him in cultivating and accumulating good deeds. She worried when they would be able to fulfill the pledge of 10,000 good deeds. From the text. That night, after your mother spoke these words, I dreamed of a heavenly being and told him of my difficulty in completing the 10,000 good deeds. The heavenly being told me that when I became a mayor, I had reduced the taxes on the farmlands. That was a great good deed, and that deed itself was worth 10,000 merits. My vow was already fulfilled. As it turned out, the farmers in Baodi County had to pay a very high tax, and when I came to office, I reduced the taxes on the farmlands by nearly half. But I felt strange and bewildered. How had the heavenly being known about the tax reduction? I still had doubts and wondered how a single deed could be worth 10,000 merits. End quote. After he had become the county mayor, Mr. Liao Fan had reduced the taxes on farmlands by almost half. But he did not understand how a heavenly being could have known about this. Could it really have happened? The amount of the decrease was substantial, Thus, all the farmers in the county had benefited from this act. Actually, far more than 10,000 farmers in the county had benefited this. So this could have easily fulfilled his pledge. However, he was uncomfortable for two reasons. First, how had the heavenly being known what he had done? Second, could this one act really be worth 10,000 merits and virtues? From this we can see why it is said that a position in the government is a good place to accumulate merit and virtue. Average people usually do not get this kind of opportunity to accumulate such good fortune and virtue. If Mr. Liao Fan had not become a county mayor, how many years would it have taken him to complete 10,000 meritorious deeds? At that time, he had the opportunity to benefit thousands of farmers. Thus, his one good deed was indeed equal to 10,000 merits. It was easy to accumulate merits and virtues, and it was just as easy to commit wrongdoings. For if a public policy did not benefit the populace, but proved harmful to them, then this act would have become 10,000 offenses. Good fortune or misfortune truly depends on our thoughts. The higher our position, the greater the possibilities for creating good fortune or misfortune. A leader of a county can implement one policy, do one good deed that will prove beneficial to all fellow citizens and accomplish thousands, millions of good deeds. On the other hand, if the leader implemented a policy that proved harmful to the public, then he or she could have committed thousands, even millions of offenses. Average people do not usually have this kind of opportunity. There is a limit to the extent of good or bad we can do. If we hold the position and the status, and thus have the opportunity, we would do well to be cautious in our every action. By cultivating good deeds, we will have a bright future. To do otherwise will ensure that we will fall into the three bad realms. Why? The results from our actions are more extensive and inclusive compared to those of average citizens. From the text. Coincidentally, the Zen master Xuan Yu was traveling from Wutai Mountain and stopped in Baodi. I invited him to the government residence, told him of my dream, and asked him whether it was believable. Master Xuan Yu said, "If one does a good deed with such a true and sincere heart, without expectation of reward, then one good deed can indeed be worth the merits of 10,000 good deeds. Besides, your act of reducing the taxes in this county benefits more than 10,000 people. You have relieved the suffering of heavy taxes on all these farmers. The good fortune you will gain from this act will surely be great. End quote. Not long after he had his dream, by chance, he met the Zen master, Xuan Yu, from Utai 5 Plateau Mountain, and asked him about what had happened. He wanted to know if it was indeed possible. It would be wonderful if something like this was really possible. If it was true that the pledge of 10,000 good deeds had already been accomplished. If it was not true, then he would continue to gradually accomplish the 10,000 good deeds. Master Xuan Yu told him that yes, one good deed done with a heart of sincerity can indeed be worth the merits from 10,000 good deeds. This principle, to cultivate one is to cultivate all, was explained in the Flower Adornment Sutra. It is the learning and cultivation of non-hindrance. Why? Everything arises from our self-nature. If the cultivation corresponds with the self-nature, then it can be regarded as cultivating all. If we do good deeds not from our self-nature, but because we are seeking, then we will receive only what we seek and nothing more. If we seek from the self-nature, then not only will we attain what we seek, but we will also gain infinite benefits. What is the nature of the mind? An example which is easy to understand is called purity of mind in the Pure Land School. When our minds are pure, all of our deeds will be kind, will be good. Then we will accumulate far more than just 10,000 meritorious deeds. Amitabha is a name of millions of virtues. As we gradually come to understand the true reality, we will realize that what Master Oe said was logical, that Amitabha encompasses all of the infinite ways of practice. He said, how would we know that if we were able to be mindful of Buddha Amitabha, then we would understand all of the wisdom of the great Buddhist canon. Also, we can attain awakening with the guidance of the 17,100 stories of the Zen school. The practice of Zen Buddhism and the other schools are all encompassed within Amitabha. 3,000 kinds of dignified manners, 80,000 minute courtesies, and 3 divisions of precepts are within Amitabha. All the precepts, all the Buddhist teachings, all worldly teachings are encompassed within Amitabha. All methods, all ways of practice are within this name, for one is all. All is one. However, many people do not yet understand this. When we have achieved purity of mind, then we will have perfectly achieved innumerable methods. There are still many people who do not yet know the infinite methods, the infinite advantages found in the name Amitabha. When we give rise to thoughts, all Buddhas, all Bodhisattvas, all spirits of heaven and earth instantly know them. This one thought arises from our true nature. The true mind has no limits, has no boundary. When we do even the slightest good deed, if it corresponds with the true mind, then no matter how small, it is still infinite. Mr. Liao Fan has yet to reach this level of understanding, has not yet reached this state of mind. He had only benefited the public from the aspect of phenomena. When we do a good deed with a heart of sincerity, then this deed can indeed be worth the merits of 10,000. This is the principle. He told Mr. Liao Fan that yes, indeed, his act of reducing the taxes in this county had relieved the suffering of heavy taxes on all the farmers, and had indeed benefited more than 10,000 people. However, Mr. Liao Fan had yet to understand this, as his completion of the 10,000 good deeds was done from the phenomena aspect. If he had done so from his self-nature, if he had cultivated from his true mind, then that one deed would not have been worth just the merits of 10,000, but of innumerable good deeds. If we see a beggar on the street and freely give him $1, then the merit of this accords with our self-nature. Why? Because at that time we did not have discriminatory thoughts of others and we, of beggar and giver. We did not differentiate between receiver and giver. We were not attached. In this way, the merits from giving $1 are infinite, for they are the uncovering of our virtuous nature. The merit from giving millions of dollars may be less than that of $1 sincerely given. Why? We have given this money from our 8 consciousness minds. This mind has discriminatory thoughts, has attachments. It is limited, and therefore we are unable to break through this obstruction. However, when we act from our true mind and donate just $1, but have neither discriminatory thoughts nor attachments, then the merit is as boundless as the infinite universe. The reason why our merits cannot compare with those of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is because of the differences in our minds, the differences in our intentions. The environment changes according to our minds. We, as ordinary people, are very narrow-minded. No matter how much good fortune or merit we cultivate, we will always be bound by our discriminatory thoughts and attachments. These thoughts and attachments no longer bind Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Even when they perform a small deed, their merits are infinite. In understanding this principle, our every thought will be perfect, and our merits and virtues will be infinite. Mr. Liao could not even yet imagine this state of mind. So he practiced from the aspect of phenomena and benefited only 10,000 people. From the text. Upon hearing his words, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and immediately gave all my savings for him to take back to Utai Mountain. I asked the master to use the money for a food offering for 10,000 monks and to dedicate the merits for me. End quote. It was rare to see a person like Mr. Liao who would, without having to think it over, give his savings to the Utai way places to provide meals for 10,000 monks. Usually, when laypersons wished to be generous, they would donate money for meals for 1,000 monks and nuns. But Mr. Liao wanted to do so for 10,000 to fulfill his great vow of 10,000 deeds. During the Ming and Qing dynasties, Buddhism flourished. Thousands of monks and nuns lived on the 4 great mountains in China. The 10,000 who lived on Utai Mountain was actually not an especially large number. The mountain with the most people was Putao, with around 30 to 40,000 monks and nuns. And there were over 10,000 monks and nuns living on Amei and Jiuhua Mountain. These mountains symbolized Great Conduct Bodhisattva and Earth Treasure Bodhisattva, respectively. Mr. Yu explained in his commentary that someone who makes such a quick decision to give generously without the slightest thought of reluctance or miserliness will gain infinite good fortune in return. This generous giving, without the slightest doubt, showed that Mr. Liao Fan was an honest official, not at all corrupt. How much money could he have? He gave all of his savings to provide food for 10,000 people. He came from a poor but honest family, and he was very rare in that he deeply understood the law of cause and effect. He would never have taken anything that was not his, something not readily achieved by most people. While we do good deeds, most of us will only do the minimum. In this case, we might have given $100 and felt very pleased with ourselves. Unlike Mr. Liao Fan, who gave everything he had, a very rare person. From the book. Mr. Kong had predicted that I would die at the age of 53. However, I survived that year without illness, although I did not ask the heavens for a longer life. Now, I am 69. End quote. Mr. Liao Fan was destined to die at 53. It was a very accurate prediction. He would die in his home on August the 14th at the age of 53. He would die in the morning between the hours of 1 and 3. It was in this year that he would undergo a severe misfortune and would not survive. Mr. Liao Fan wrote his book at the age of 69. He had not sought to live beyond 53. However, he passed the year in good health without encountering any severe misfortunes. It is obvious that the issue of birth and death, of long life, is of utmost importance in our lives. If long life can be sought, what is there that we cannot seek? Without long life, it would be difficult to seek attainment and enjoyment of fame, wealth, prestige, and children. This seeking has to be done properly, in accordance with the teachings. It has to be done from our mind, from our heart of utmost sincerity. In this way, there is nothing that cannot be attained. If we were to seek from the outside, as Master Yuan Gu had said, then we would lose both inside and outside. There is nothing that cannot be attained. Whether we are Buddhists seeking good fortune, or Chinese seeking good fortune, long lives, and children. Indeed, we can seek to attain more good fortune and even longer life, more children and grandchildren. Nothing is unattainable. We have seen that Mr. Liao Fan gained good fortune, long life, and children to totally surpass the constant in his destiny. These were what he gained through cultivation, because these were not destined. from the book. The book of history explains that destiny exists, but it is difficult to be believed by most people because it is very changeable. End quote. The book of history is one of the 5 classics. The others are the book of songs, the book of changes, the book of rites, and the spring-autumn annals.